Any questions about impaired driving by alcohol or drug or the incident yesterday? I don't have any details. I wasn't at that scene, but I can comment on the circumstances to some degree.
What were the circumstances that you can?
Well, basically, it's the same thing. This vehicle headed westbound on Glenmore Trail. Hit and runs, numerous vehicles on the way. Obviously, people driving there know that something's up. And eventually the vehicle stops, officers attend, they realize this person is under the influence of drugs believed to be fentanyl, is the belief, and they then use the Lanoxin to bring this person back from going unconscious, and the person was charged for impaired driving and careless driving at this point.
How often are you responding to collisions like this where people are driving
I don't have a number, but anecdotally, it's something that we're seeing a rise, and a couple of reasons. One, we know that obviously in the city of Calgary and across the country, fentanyl and drug abuse behind the wheel and stolen vehicles and such is quite high, and obviously resulted in some really horrific incidences last year in particular. Police were engaged, and so what we're seeing now, the public calling in more often than normal because they're recognizing this. So it's hard to say that it's increasing because of usage or it's increased call load because the public out there is concerned, and rightly so. When they see something they believe is impaired, they're calling 911, and we dispatch a car absolutely immediately out there to go intercept this individual. And I think the public is keenly aware of the dangers of anyone driving under the influence of alcohol or drug. Right now, that's not my case. That's 2 districts' case, so I can't comment on where they're at with that.
Generally speaking, in driving under the influence of drugs, like impaired driving where drugs were involved, are you seeing cases where there are charges?
Yes, and the officers are more aware of it. We also have DREs with drug recognition expert officers, and they're on call out, so they're getting called more often. So part of it is the education of our own officers, education of the public, understanding when we have something under the influence, we'll call the DRE out. This individual will come up, perform their tests, and determine pretty closely, if not exactly, what drug they're influenced under.
You said you had to use naloxone on this individual. Do you guys believe that during the time they were driving, they were passing out?
Again, we can only guess. I don't know. I don't know the details on that, and I'm not sure the officers would know unless the witnesses would have said it appeared to be. So, I mean, that's the assumption that he was, passing out. But again, I can't confirm that.
Obviously, you're seeing more of these with drugs, but we have Stampede starting today, pretty much.
Correct.
And we're going to see a lot more people using alcohol and recreational drugs, I'm sure. What kind of message do you have for those people?
Well, the big one is obviously plan ahead, and this is one here. We beat this one. Don't get behind the wheel. Bottom line. If you had a couple drinks after work, during work during Stampede, any drugs, marijuana, obviously the heavy drugs, do not get behind any motor vehicle and drive on the road. Obviously, you're putting yourself at risk, anyone else at risk. We all know that Calgary is known for the Stampede. It's a great time of year. We have tons of tourists in town. There's tons of pedestrian traffic, so what you have is vulnerable people crossing the road, maybe running across the road. We have extra people from different towns driving, not familiar with the road. So it really, at times, it's kind of chaos driving around Calgary because it's a lot of people. It's a lot of congestion. So the last thing you want to do is be part of that stat or something that you may not be going home that night or something you have to live with the rest of your life because you are responsible for yourself, someone in the vehicle, or killing a pedestrian, someone on a bicycle, someone walking down the sidewalk. I would say years gone by, during Stampede, let's face it, everybody has a good time, and for the most part, a lot of people understand don't get behind the wheel. So we don't see a big raise in stats for impaired driving during Stampede time because most people really kind of figure that out. And let's face it, the Calgarians are pretty responsible in that matter. Getting into the drug side, it's a whole different ballgame, and obviously they're not thinking correctly, and maybe that decision-making's bad, but I'd say overall, plan ahead. Transit runs extended hours, so the city is really taking its part to make sure that you have accessibility to get home safe, have a designated driver, find a way home, walk home. That's a good way to straighten up on the way, just make sure you're walking on the sidewalk. And, really, this is a time that, we want to embrace Calgary, and this is Stampede, and it's something we're aware of. We're going to have roving 24/7 check stops. And what I mean by that, we have our officers on motorcycles, we have our officers on unmarked cars, and we have the check stop buses, 2 of them, that will be roving around. We ran a check stop Saturday at 11 a.m. down in the Ogden area. We got 2 impaired drivers at 11:05. So we're bumping this up. We're looking at this, and we want people to respond. And this is where we want the media, everyone here, obviously, get that message out there. We can get through Stampede without having an impaired driving charge. We can get through Stampede without a serious accident or death. That is absolutely huge. And, the drug aspect, that's something that we all know is coming at us full speed ahead with the possible legalization or decriminalization of marijuana next year. So that's something in the back of all police officers' minds. That's why we're training more DRE officers all the time to get behind this. And what we're saying is basically, just don't get behind the wheel when you're under the influence of anything, and have fun during Stampede. Hoop it up out there, but just don't get behind the wheel, and don't put everyone in your car in danger. And we've seen that before with the driver. It always seems to be that mysterious thing. The driver gets into a crash, the driver doesn't even get a scratch, the pedestrians are all dead. And now you live with that the rest of your life, and the monetary lawsuits and mental anguish going after that. It's just not worth it. And especially this day and age, there's a way to get home, or you just stay in that established for the next 24 hours because they're almost open that long, so you're okay.
In regards to the like you said, the marijuana legalization possibly coming down the line here, is that the sort of preparation you guys are doing? Is this DRE program for your officers? Is it going to be all of them are going to be trained at some point in drug recognition?
Well, yes, we're going to try and train as many officers as possible in that program. That is the goal, and it's right across the country. And right now that seems to be the best. We don't know what the legislation is going to look like. We don't know what the tools are going to be out there to assist police officers. But in the meantime, that's something we're really honing our skills, and we're having more and more frequent calls by the officers on the street to call a DRE officer to show up. Could be a minor offender bender. So everyone's taking it quite seriously to try and get ahead of the curve. And, let's face it, Calgary, sometimes the traffic is heavy. And when you see something like that yesterday of crashing into cars, it was kind of a bit of a miracle that no one got seriously injured.
Sorry, just to follow up on that last question. Is that something that holds up in court? Like if you're charged with impaired driving based upon the DRE officer's recognition of a drug in your system?
Yeah, they're recognized as experts in court.
Okay.
Yes.
And that unit was supposed to expand in February, but to 19 or by 19?
It's 20 right now, and we're going to be training more officers on an ongoing basis as once the courses are ready. I mean, it's difficult because we have to send our officers down to the U.S., so there's a cost factor, it's a time factor, it's a quite extensive course, and obviously they have to know their stuff. They're going to be an expert in court and have to know all the angles of that. So it is quite in-depth course, but that is our goal, to train as many officers as possible for the next so many years, until we get to a point where it'd be nice to have everybody trained, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
What's your sort of message to good sober drivers who are just doing their thing but are concerned about the fact that people actively overdosing on fentanyl are behind the wheel driving down the unmarked trail?
Well, again, we've had great response over the years with the MAD program and calling 911 for impaired drivers. Same thing with this. This is really no different. If you suspect this person, they're weaving in the road, something suspicious, they're nodding out, you see what they're doing out there, and then you realize, okay, they're not on their phone, they're not texting, because that's usually what that identifies. Next step is they're under the influence of something. And that's usually what we're seeing right now. Either someone's texting and driving, and they're weaving, showing all the signs until you get beside them, you see the phone in their hand, and maybe they're also impaired and on drugs. So that is something now we're getting more people call that in. So really great news. The public is engaged and they're calling in, and we're taking action. Even after the fact, we will follow down people that we believe that we're in that situation. We're going to have a talk with them. We won't be able to lay any charges at that time if we don't catch them. But we're not going to. We get the information. We get the plate number. We're gonna go find them.
And I've actually called 911 on suspected drunk drivers, and the advice they was given is do not follow. And do you want to just go into that?
Right, that you got to get the plate, get the identification if you can see the driver, but don't put yourself at risk, because now you're putting yourself in a risky maneuver. They may notice you're there, and all of a sudden this turns into a road rage or something worse, or who knows what they're doing. Do they have weapons, or what are their motive out there? And you don't want to follow, because now you're putting yourself at risk trying to drive and talk on the phone and do that. So really, get that plate as soon as you can. Get the make of the vehicle, if you can tell what, male, female, what they look like, vague description, and then disengage and let the police, because don't forget, we do have that helicopter that pretty much nothing will run that. Once they get called, they're there pretty quick, and they can follow that vehicle. So we've had a lot of success with that. The officers are pretty engaged, and you all know, you see every night the amount of stolen vehicles that go through the city, and we're starting to make a dent on some of those, and a lot of people are getting arrested.
Will you have one of those special drug officers at the check stop at the top?
Yes, a high percentage of our traffic officers are DREs, and all the members in the alcohol drug recognition unit, they're DREs. So they're there, and so they're always on site. Plus, we have the ones that we can call up from the districts to be available.